after this week's superstar shakeup and watching my beloved blue brand get absolutely fucked up the ass, damn, NXT felt good tonight. Jesus Christ. What's going on, everybody? It's your buddy, it's your pal Spaz Phoenix, the YWC Reality Check, here with your April... didn't write it down. I think it's April 12th. Anyways, NXT review. And it's a very, very interesting episode of NXT tonight. NXT got a bit of a facelift, which is interesting. We'll talk about that in a second. NXT gave me a lot of hope for their roster, which we'll get into over the course of the evening. We'll start with the most obvious things right away. NXT has a brand new theme song announced by Triple H earlier on Twitter. It's all right. It's a good little bit of a thing. It's not something I would put on my iPad and listen to. I think it's called Rage. I don't know who does it, but it's a good enough little thing. They've changed up all their logos and their graphics and their transitions and their card, their fight card graphics, all that sort of thing, which is kind of nice. It goes along with the new belts that they unveiled at TakeOver, which are great. You cannot escape the fact that any NXT title is always going to slightly resemble an X Division title from the now defunct TNA, but they are great belts nonetheless. My comments about the new NXT title belts got reposted by Aaron Rift of No DQ, so thank you to him for that. Wasn't expecting that, but as I say, NXT got a bit of a facelift. I don't know if the stage is different or the way they've set up the monitors on the stage is different, but it looked different. And it looked different especially for our first competitor, was Aleister Black, who debuted at TakeOver, who was apparently some guy named Tommy End over in the Brit Rest scene, which I don't watch, so I don't know, so new to me. This guy's entrance, I mean, it's not elaborate like an Ember Moon or a Finn Balor or a Bray Wyatt or an NXT, but this guy's entrance is pretty damn good. The way he flips into the ring and lands in that sort of Raven crouch type of position, he's got that weird, and they talked about it a lot on commentary too. I'm starting to really like Nigel McGuinness. Percy Watson doesn't bug me as much as he used to, and Tom Phillips, he might be the face that face fucks the place, but he does hold down the commentary team pretty damn well on NXT. But they did a really good job of talking about how calm he was, how he wasn't agitated, how he wasn't hyper, how he wasn't bouncing around the ring like his opponent, whose name is apparently Corey Hollis, but it doesn't really matter. He's hopping around. Aleister Black, not only standing there all nice and stoic, hands behind his back, the whole bit. The bell rings, you get one black mass, which is what they're calling this wicked roundhouse knockout kick that he does, and one move and the match is over. But the guy looks impressive as hell. He looks scary as hell. They've put a lot into his imaging and into his I don't know what you'd call it, his demeanor, his presence, his he doesn't look like somebody you want to fuck with. Now, is it a squash match for this Corey Hollis guy? Yeah. Is it a case of, okay, do a couple of these and then show me what this guy can do in a long, prolonged match? Obviously. I mean, he destroyed Andrade Cien Almas at TakeOver, which already means he's got a big tick in the box in my book. But really cool, really great presentation, really interesting looking character. I'd love to see, because they did those fade to black promos. I mean, obviously they had to do the pun with the Aleister Black, fade to black. I mean, the NXT is more rock and roll than WWE is, for sure. So obviously the fade to black reference was going to happen. I can't wait to see what this guy can do in a feud, in a longer match, in a pay-per-view length match. But great way to debut him on the show, because he debuted at TakeOver. He hasn't had a match on the regular show until tonight. So great debut for him. They replayed Dillinger debuting on SmackDown Live in his win over Hawkins. I like that they do this. I like that they do this because as much as they are their own brand, they are also a feeder system, and you know, it's a little bit of, you know, William Regal and Matt Bloom and Triple H gotta sort of have that collective proud papa sort of vibe whenever one of their guys goes up to the main roster. So it's all good, but then you wonder how they're gonna send him off, because typically they do. When Sami Zayn went up to the main roster, his last match was against Nakamura. Finn Balor, you knew when it was his last match. Samoa Joe, we kind of knew when it was his last match. Dillinger, we weren't really sure of, because he was in that weird clusterfuck 8-person mixed tag at the pay-per-view, which wasn't the best thing in the world. But how are they going to give him his send-off? He announced that, you know, ever since he's been on SmackDown, he's been there a couple of weeks now, but it occurs to him that he's got unfinished business with Eric Young, and William Regal has allowed him the opportunity to finish that unfinished business next week on NXT. Oh, and by the way, if you think Sanity's going to get involved, next week's match is a cage match. So once again, the Battle of Canada between two other Canadians. Canadians are getting a lot of play this week. It's good. I like it a lot. But we're going to get Eric Young, Ty Dillinger in a cage. Eric Young's probably going to go over since Ty Dillinger's going up. But it should be a good match, and it should be finally these two one-on-one, which is great. We have DIY, who took on, I don't want to say jobbers, but I didn't catch their names. As much as I like Nigel McGuinness on commentary, his accent still is something to get over, and I'm sorry I didn't catch these guys' names. So they are Big Jobber and Little Jobber. Big Jobber was a 300-pound motherfucker that looks like he could bench press a house, or at least help Braun Strowman with the ambulance Roman Reigns, and the only push we actually want Roman Reigns to get. But that's an easy joke to make, isn't it? So you got DIY, who you know are going to win, versus these two other guys. Sure. I think one of the little one's name was Blaze or some shit like that. I don't even know. Headlock by Ciampa and a clothesline and a tackle by the Jobber. Vertical suplex by the Jobber. And when I say vertical suplex, I mean he just held him up there as long as he wanted to hold him up there. It was good. Vertical suplex on Gargano. Little Jobber attacks in the corner. Neckbreaker by Gargano. Chops and a kick sandwich by DIY. And when I say a kick sandwich, I mean you got one guy propped up in the corner. You got one of DIY running at him in the ring. One of DIY running at him on the apron. And they do sequential enziguris, for lack of a better term, and then back in the middle they get in another set of kicks. This one is called Meet Me in the Middle. It's their finisher move. It's got a dumb name, like their tag team has a dumb name. DIY, the fantastic tag team with the shitty name. Oh yes, and their finishing move is cool, but they could have come up with something better than the meet in the middle. After the match, DIY bails so that we can watch the Big Jobber beat up the Little Jobber, and I guess the big guy is going to be a thing. I really would have loved it. Okay, there's not very many times where I say I would have loved somebody to go to Raw. DIY could have gone to Raw and been a 1-2 punch for the Raw roster. You could have had them beef up the tag team division and beef up the cruiserweight division. I would have said, put Revival on SmackDown, put DIY on Raw. You could tell this amazing story about this tag team, DIY, that are so competitive they even compete against each other. They could hold the tag team titles while feuding over the Cruiserweight title, and I think that's a really kick-ass story that WWE really missed the boat on, if you want my honest opinion. I can speak, I swear. They replay Asuka's win at TakeOver, which is fine and wonderful, and she's still undefeated, and she's, you know, a beast and a monster, but she had to cheat a little bit. And then they did this other thing of Ember Moon walking through the arena as the arena is being torn down. It's a nice, neat little thing. It's a different take on a post-match interview, for sure. But they're making her sound all sad and weepy and weak and bitter, and it really, I'm sorry to say this because I like Ember Moon, it disintegrated all that, you know, that dark, badass, indestructible, relentless character that they've built up for her, and they've done really well with it. But to see her just cut this sad promo where most of it's a voiceover and it sounds like she's crying, I'm not saying that you can't add emotion to a feud. Please don't get me wrong. But this feud where it basically sounds like she wants to cry, it does ding her illusion, her allure, a little bit. Not enough that it makes me not like the character, but I thought they could have done that a little bit better. Ruby Riot, who also debuted at TakeOver and who is fucking great, versus Kimberly Franklin. Now, I read on the dirt sheets, because I occasionally do that, that this girl, Kimberly Franklin, is some girl from the indies called Kimberly, which is great, which a lot of people have been buzzing her about for a long time. I'm not familiar, so she's brand new to me. So if this is somebody that I really need to keep an eye on, like you guys usually do, throw it down in the box below and let me know. But collar and elbow tie up and an arm drag and a throat shot by Franklin, which looks, it almost looked like she missed and actually got her in the Adam's apple right at the beginning of the match, which was bad. A boot by Riot and a Hurricane Rana. Nikki Cross shows up at ringside. I love this feud. I've only seen Ruby Riot for a couple of weeks. I love Nikki Cross. If they want to play up the super simple, straightforward, direct, crazy versus crazy feud, I am all in on that. Jawbreaker and a tilt-a-whirl backbreaker by Franklin. They have a chop battle, and there's a lariat and a drop kick by Riot. Reverse Rana, face first into the turnbuckle by Riot, was fucking awesome. Roundhouse Pele kick gets the win for Ruby Riot. Whoever this Franklin chick is, if she's as awesome as some people are playing her out to be, this this Kimberly that I'm not familiar with. I hope she gets a fair shot down the line, but Ruby Riot is the one that debuted at a pay-per-view. She's obviously the one getting the push. She's obviously the one going into the feud with Nikki Cross. It's all on the upswing, is it not? They replay the Authors of Pain winning at TakeOver, and they replay, the fuck is his name? Paul Ellering, cutting a Paul Ellering promo, and I hate to say this like this, but it's kind of like Bray Wyatt, it's kind of like Shinsuke Nakamura. It's Paul Ellering doing what Paul Ellering does, essentially. He didn't really say anything new. My guys are great, and they're here to take over, and they're causing an apocalypse, and they are the personification of destruction. Not to say that he doesn't deliver the promo well and he doesn't represent his guys fantastically, but it is a bit of a lather, rinse, repeat promo. Peyton Royce and Billie Kay are shown at the medical facility of wherever they did TakeOver, and they're picking on Aaliyah and Liv Morgan, and Liv Morgan proceeds to push one of them into an ice therapy bath, and comedy ensures, which is nice. The newly hired Drew McIntyre versus Oney Lorcan. Now this is interesting too, because you know Drew McIntyre is just on his triumphant return. He's gonna win this match. You could go into this show tonight and hear that these two are gonna fight, and you know that Drew McIntyre is gonna win this match, but that's okay. His new music sucks. I'm gonna put that one out there right now. Whatever the one, the old creepy music that he used to have, that Out of Time, or I think it's called Changes or some shit like that, that he used to have on not on NXT, this is NXT, on SmackDown back in the day when he was doing the whole Chosen One gimmick. I really wish they had kept that music, because they kept the video. That's the thing. They kept the video. You expect the music to go in turn, but it's all right. It's sort of a jazzed up bagpipe thing, and he's Scottish, so let's throw bagpipes in there. Okay, whatever. Loud welcome back chants, loud Chosen One chants, which makes me smile. It's the same as okay, it's not the same, but it's similar to when Bray Wyatt debuted and they chanted Husky Harris at him. But it's also similar to Mark Henry when he's out there being a babyface, and that some people still chant Sexual Chocolate at him. And it's just, I mean, it's bad. I mean, it's the whole Byron Saxton, the chocolate man-child that he is. It's bad, but it's good, because the Chosen One, it's one of those things from back in the day that should have worked. It should have worked, but it just didn't. Anyways, collar and double tap and a headlock by Lorcan. Drew tosses Lorcan. Lorcan comes back with some uppercuts. Outside crossbody. And here's the deal. Lorcan's on the top rope. McIntyre's on the outside. Lorcan tries a crossbody to the outside. Drew catches him, sort of deadlifts him in midair, and body slams him on the apron. Ever since Kevin Owens started doing the apron powerbomb, everybody's doing something on the apron. Corner chops by Drew and a boot by Lorcan. Blockbuster by Lorcan. Top rope toss by Drew. They trade punches, and there's a boot by Drew McIntyre. And then he does this sort of slingshot thing. He's got him up in the ropes, or sorry, tangled in the ropes, and then he sort of picks him up with the legs over the shoulder. Imagine, how can I describe it? You guys know I suck at describing things. Imagine you're sitting on somebody's shoulders for like a piggyback ride type deal, but then you lean back and you hang backwards. So he for lack of a better term, Oney Lorcan is in a tree of woe on the back of Drew McIntyre, but he slingshots him all the way forward. The momentum takes him face first to the mat, and when you see Oney Lorcan at the end of this match, it fucked him up pretty damn good, because you get a running low drop kick or a running single leg drop kick from Drew McIntyre, and that ends the match. Drew gets the obvious win, but Oney Lorcan is busted the fuck open, and it's dirty. And you see this a lot more in NXT. Is it a case of you go to the main roster and you become a pussy, or you go to the main roster and Vince McMahon pussifies you? Throw it down in the box below. I'd love to know what you guys think about that. But he ate shit on the mat super hard, face first, and it showed. And it's cool for Oney Lorcan, because he's like that basic brawler type guy, you know. You don't have to be pretty to get the job done, like that kind of brawler. So any fuck up to his face is going to add to his character, as much as I hate to say that. Drew says on the microphone, why is he back? He's here to be champion, obviously. And he says, I've got the raw talent and I can lay the smack down on anybody, but there's nowhere I'd rather be than NXT. Now, after the superstar fuck up, I cannot agree with Drew McIntyre anymore. Lorcan just leaves looking all fucked up. Drew McIntyre walks out looking like a boss. And we go from that to genuinely a super happy moment. These are the kind of moments you do not get on the main roster of WWE, because NXT is just that different. The farewell to Shinsuke Nakamura. Shinsuke Nakamura comes out. For those of you, and me too, that say that he can't talk on the microphone, yeah, it's true. He's no Ric Flair, he's no Rock. But he came out, he cut a pretty damn good goodbye speech to this crowd. He talks about coming in a year ago, he already had the experience, but he still had so much to learn. He learned so much from this brand. He learned from the guys in the back, the trainers, the coaches, the NXT staff, the fellow superstars on the brand. Talks about how NXT is a brand on its own. It's not just a training system, even though it kind of is. And then he talks about the fans. He talks about how crazy the fans are, how NXT belongs to them, how they come up with the cheers and the chants and the singing. He tells them they're crazy, and he does the Triple H line where it's like, you know, I will always be NXT because we are NXT. And then they play his music, and he just gets to soak it up. And he doesn't say anything. Nobody else has to come out and say anything. Nobody else has to come out and pay tribute to him. Nobody else has to come out there and kiss his butt on the way out. Nothing like that. But you just see as he's in the ring, soaking up the crowd, because they're singing his theme as loud as they possibly can. Droves and droves and droves of the NXT staff, coaches, medical staff, wrestlers, announcers filling the rampway. Eventually he makes his way up the rampway. He bows to Hideo Itami, and obviously you got to believe those two have a certain kind of kinship, along with Asuka, just, you know, being fellow hometown people or home country people. I have to imagine that they have some sort of innate personal relationship with each other. But he also, you know, he shows his respect to William Regal. Excuse me, obviously. But then you see he sort of turns around back to the crowd, so the photographers are there taking pictures, and here's Shinsuke with everybody else behind him, but sort of just quietly. He doesn't make a big deal of himself, but you see a single body sort of make his way through the crowd to give Shinsuke a big hug to end the show, and it's Finn Balor. You got the show ending, Shinsuke's farewell ending with a hug between him and Finn Balor. And that was a really, really nice moment. I'm not going to sit here and get all choked up and emo about it, but you don't get these moments on the main roster. I mean, yeah, you had the farewell for The Undertaker at WrestleMania, but it's the fucking Undertaker. On a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, you will not get moments like this, like you get on NXT on the main roster, because it just doesn't happen, and I'm glad for NXT for that reason. Now, I want to address something before I go, because I was thinking about this as I was watching the show. A lot of us have said for a while that NXT is in a particular slump because they lost a lot of stars last year, and they have really been playing catch up ever since, which is kind of the case and whatever. But with the return of Drew McIntyre, and they're really letting him sort of play up the Drew Galloway badass character that he was in TNA, so good for them for that. They need to find him some better music, but that's okay. You got a big, huge badass like Aleister Black, who's nothing but potential if you ask me, and then you have the women's division. The tag team division is going to struggle. I'll give you that. Right now, you got DIY, the Authors of Pain, and Heavy Machinery, and the Bollywood Boys. You need more in that division, because if they put the titles on the Bollywood Boys, I might cry a little. But you talk about, you know, the strength of the Raw roster, even though Raw doesn't do anything with their women. You talk about the SmackDown women's roster, who lost Alexa Bliss and got cursed with Charlotte, and it's terrible, and Naomi is still their champion, and it's vulgar. But then you look at NXT, and you don't think about NXT having a big roster, but think about it for a second. You've got maybe 5 main names on Raw. You've got the entire 6 women of SmackDown that were all shown on television on Tuesday. On NXT, not including their developmental talent, you have Aaliyah, Liv Morgan, Peyton Royce, Billie Kay, Ruby Riot, Nikki Cross, Ember Moon, and Asuka, which means by default they have the most diverse and talented group of women of any of the 3 brands in the WWE. Oh yes. So anybody that's, NXT's in its low point, it's in its slump, there's no reason to watch, they're going to have to try super hard to regenerate any interest in this show. Watch this show and try to tell me that again. This was a fucking kick-ass show. If this is, if WrestleMania is the season finale for wrestling and this is the new season premiere, this is going to be a good year for NXT. You got to believe McIntyre is going up against Rude. That alone, along with, like I say, very, very diverse women's roster. It's only a 1-hour show. You don't need a lot to fill a 1-hour show. But if you can give me Ruby Riott versus Nikki Cross, Ember Moon versus Asuka again, Aaliyah, Liv Morgan versus Peyton Royce, Billie Kay. There's 3 women's feuds right there, using up all 8 of their talent. Raw should take notice. SmackDown, I know we're struggling right now because we lost our ace in the hole in Alexa Bliss, and Charlotte is not a fair trade. She's just not. But if they can take any lessons from NXT, I hope they do at this point, because this is the high point for the women's division on NXT, and we've got the tournament coming up soon. I don't know where the winner of that tournament is going to go. Hopefully they go to NXT and then progress accordingly. We don't have that information quite yet, but it's a pretty cool time to be watching NXT. It's not stellar, it's not WrestleMania worthy every week, but it's not meant to be. It's NXT. It's its own brand, and it's developmental. Is it its own brand? Is it developmental? It's both. Sit back and enjoy it. I've been Spaz, your YWC Reality Check. Subscribe up there, talk down there, start a conversation, keep all these conversations going. Don't be a stranger. I will talk to each and every last one of you later, but for right now, I'm tagging out. Bye, guys.